Hi, this is voice of the St. Joseph Sports Network, Matt Martucci, and you're listening to Sports and Rants on Radio 1851.
And we are back. This is Sports and Rants with Brett and Pants. I'm your host, Brett Suto, along with my co-host, Glenn Pantalone, and we are live with former Boston Red Sox Lars Anderson. Lars, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on and joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we're ready to talk some baseball with you.
Cool.
All right, so what are your thoughts so far on the MLB season?
To be honest, I'm so invested in my own season that I don't watch a ton of Major League Baseball. Some stuff is on in the the clubhouse and then I'll catch a few games here and there, but I don't actively watch it. But I pay attention to guys that I've played with and teams that I've been with. For me, it's cool to see the Cubs winning. I played with that organization last year. I've played with some of the guys that are up there helping them right now, some of the young guys, and so that's exciting for me to see. And guys with the Dodgers now that are going to the major leagues. Corey Seager, Scott Schebler, guys that I know personally, and that's fulfilling for me to see that.
Is there any former teammate that you love to watch play?
Yeah, lots of them. My best friend is also one of my favorite players. That's Ryan Kalish. He hasn't played in a couple of years due to injury, but he was always my favorite guy to watch because he was kind of a five-tool player. He did everything really well.
All right. So, Lars, you grew up in California. How did that help you hone in on your baseball skills? And were you a baseball all-year-round type of guy?
Well, to answer the first question, I think, growing up in a sunny, warm place or relatively warm place like Sacramento means that you're outside a lot and you really have very few limits on being on a field or, hitting on a field, taking ground balls, whatever. So it's a lot easier for me to get work in than someone living in, say, Minnesota. I was not a year-round baseball guy. My parents were pretty encouraging that I should play other sports and do other things, and there wasn't any pressure to do it year-round. That sort of vibe was just starting to go when I was coming up, where you needed to do it all year-round, and there were teams to do it all year-round. But it wasn't like it is now. And in my opinion, it's pretty unhealthy. And I'm happy that wasn't my reality. I probably wouldn't like baseball as much anymore if I was forced to play 12 months a year.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How do you think that affects a player? Say if you were playing all year round when you were growing up, how do you think that would affect? We see more pitchers getting hurt, more players' knees just going out at a young age.
Well, yeah, I think there's a physical component of it that's a real thing where it's kind of like, grinds you down, and baseball is a really, for lack of a better term, one-sided sport. You don't use both sides of your body the same way. If you're a left-handed thrower, you're throwing off of your right leg over and over and over again. It's not like you switch legs and throw over your left leg the same amount. So, and that's hard on your body. There's nothing to balance it out. So I think if you do that too much, there are going to be problems. But I think the thing that's worse or more insidious about playing year round is it's too mentally draining. It takes the fun out of something. Anything that you do all the time without a break loses its charm. And I think the problem is that kids don't really have, if it's a kid's choice and he says, yeah, I want to do this all the time, this is all I want to do, then fine, let him go do that all the time. And that's his choice, and that's what he wants to do. But I think the issue comes when parents make their kids do that, and that's too bad for me.
And one thing you said was it's mentally draining. Playing 162 baseball games a year can be mentally draining on a player, let alone playing all year round growing up and then going into the minors and majors, playing all that baseball, it can really take an effect on a player. And how does somebody like you stay fresh, just keep going out every day and playing?
Well, I think it's something that you learn to do as you go, and some guys handle it better than others. But for me, it's always been important to have things off the field that I'm interested and passionate about, and that's changed and ebbed and flowed over the years. Like one year I remember painting a lot before going to the field. Some years my thing is reading. I'll just be going through books before the field, after the game. This year has been, I got this music program called Reason on my computer, and I've been making music on my computer, in the hotel. And so those are all things that for me are keep me from being this just baseball robot. And I think it helps my game too, because like I said, if you're enjoying what you're doing, it's a lot easier to do well.
Where did that creative side come from?
If I had to guess, I'd say my parents. I think most of us get most of our stuff from our parents, bad and good. But both my parents are artists. My dad is a metalsmith, makes jewelry with copper, bronze, silver, that sort of thing. And my mom is a painter, and also a metal worker too. But painting is kind of her bread and butter.
Now that's something we don't really hear a lot of, is the outside of the game aspect of it. And you say you enjoy painting, reading, music making. Do you see a lot of your teammates doing these things during their off times to stay focused on the game and giving themselves a mental break as well?
Yeah, I see guys reading a lot. Nowadays a lot of people have iPads and stuff like that they watch on the bus. That's kind of a nice outlet too, but that has its own pitfalls in my opinion. And then we play a lot of cards too. In the clubhouse, there's always a card game going on. After the game, sometimes someone will have cards in the room, and that's a nice way to hang out with your teammates too. I really enjoy that, because you're not just plugged into the TV. You're communicating and having fun, and that's always been a fun thing for me to do.
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot about, especially in the minor leagues, is the teammate bonding that we hear. All the guys coming together, long bus rides, things like that. You don't really hear it as much in the major leagues. Is that something you attest to, that the relationship with the guys like in the minors is better than the majors?
It can make or break a team, both for personal enjoyment and play. I've been on teams with great chemistry, and that shows on the field. You might not be the most talented, but if everybody enjoys playing together and is working together with a common goal and is really, playing for each other, not just for themselves, the team is great. And I've been on incredibly talented teams with a few bad apples, and it it hurts the team. The team underachieves. So I can't stress the value enough of chemistry and getting good guys on your team and your organization.
So when did it become apparent to you that you had the potential to be a Major League Baseball player? Was it something in high school? Was it a coach that came up to you? Was it your parents?
If you would have asked me what I wanted to do when I was 3 years old, or as soon as I knew what a job was, I would have said play professional baseball. And I was always the best or one of the best players on the field growing up. That was the case until pro ball, and sometimes during pro ball, pretty much everybody in pro ball was the best all the time, getting up until pro ball, And so, I always thought that I could do it. And that probably helped, I didn't really have it was never like an option not to do that in my mind.
Now, one thing that you said that's very interesting is that you were always the best on the field, and we hear that, like you said, with a lot of guys, they were always the best on their field until they get to pro ball, the minor leagues, and they realize, hey, they're really not the best anymore on their team. They're taking on more of a role for the team.
Right.
What's that like for a player that grew up knowing that they were the best player on the field and then all of a sudden getting knocked down to reality?
Well, I think it's different for everybody, but you know, in pro ball, you're so focused on what you need to do as an individual to perform that it's kind of like there's a little sizing up and anxiety over where you're going to be or if this guy's going to be ahead of you or whatever, am I going to have a job after spring training, that sort of thing. But you're pretty engrossed in what can I do to be the best player I can be? That's kind of where your focus is, or for me at least.
Now, one thing we like to ask, especially baseball players, is the whole college versus high school coming out or going for that scholarship. What are your thoughts on that? And it's just something that we like to hear from professional baseball players to talk about.
Well, I think it's a case-by-case thing, For me, I was pretty physically mature at 18 in high school. I was probably 6'4" and 210 pounds or something like that. And I think a big thing with pro ball is the social aspect of being away from home for the first time and like needing to be a man and an adult. There's no college buffer. Like, you got to figure out how to cook for yourself. You got to figure out. I remember doing my own laundry for the first time. Stuff like that, paying rent, the stuff that you just have never done. Just all adult stuff, and that can be really hard for guys. I was fortunate enough to have traveled a bunch with my parents growing up and had been away from home and away from them before, and so it was a tough transition, but it was totally doable for me. But some guys come from a town where there's half a stoplight and have never been out of town, and then now all of a sudden they're 2,000 miles away with a bunch of strange people, and that's a tough transition. So getting back to your question of college and high school, I think that's a big part. But also, some guys just aren't physically mature enough coming out of high school. They might be good players, but they haven't grown into their bodies and haven't gotten strong enough, and you need those extra couple years in college to get that.
Yeah, that's very true. And like what you said too, was some of these guys may not be used to going out on their own, and it may be a struggle for them. Did you see that when you were first coming up through the minors, guys that were top picks struggling to adjust?
Yeah. I saw that. And not just top picks, anybody. I saw guys who didn't know how to take care of themselves, who, partied too much, who didn't sleep enough, who didn't eat well. And this game is, the talent only takes you so far in baseball. It really, at a certain point, everybody is really good, and you have to figure out a way to get an edge. And discipline really comes into that a lot. So the guys who weren't mature enough or ready for that kind of weed themselves out early on. And some make it through and figure it out, but it's a trial by fire, to be sure. I'm amazed that sometimes that I got out of it as a young guy.
So, Lars, can you take us back to that day when you got the phone call that you were drafted, and what was the whole experience like for you?
It was really unique. I had a bunch of family out there, just graduate high school, and I wanted. I was committed to Cal, and I wanted around first-round money, so that would have been close to probably around $1 million was kind of what I was looking for to sign. And there are teams that were interested, and we were talking, but they also knew that I was really into school. And so the draft day came, and it's not like it is now where it's televised and people are there and getting hats and stuff like that. We were just home watching the computer. First round goes, second round goes. And so that was like, I probably wouldn't get what I wanted. after that. So it was a little disappointing, but I remember feeling kind of relieved. It's like, oh, I'll go to college. That's cool, you know. So I was sitting there, and you know, probably around the 10th round, I had a baseball practice to go to. So I got in my car and drove to this baseball summer league practice. And my brother called me and he said, "Hey, how you like Boston? And you got drafted by Boston." I said, "Oh, that's cool." And you know, he said, "Yeah, it was the 18th round." And I said, "All right." So it wasn't over, you know. It was cool. It was a cool feeling to get drafted. And then there's a whole long story about how they kind of courted me and stuff like that. I don't know if you want to hear that, but it was a process.
What was it like hearing that Boston, the Red Sox, one of the most historic teams in Major League Baseball, wanted you on their team?
It was very cool. I grew up an A's fan, but I always kind of was a fan of the Red Sox too. And the area scout who drafted me was my favorite of the area scouts who scouted me. His name is Blair Henry, and he was one of the first professional scouts I met. He had just moved out from the Midwest, and he followed me around all season. So it was cool to share that with him. He came over that day and gave me a hat, a Boston hat, and we had some fun. It was cool.
Wow, so you turned down college to go to the Red Sox. Was it a big decision for you? What went into that decision making?
Oh, it was a really hard decision. So they drafted me 18th round, and they basically said, you know, we're gonna send guys out and watch you throughout the summer, and there was no early signing date back then. You could sign all the way up to school, and or close to it. And they called me and said, we're gonna send scouts and watch you play, and if we like you and you feel comfortable, we'll try to work something out. So they sent guys out, you know, area scouts, cross-checkers, all those assistant scouting directors, and it was funny because I was playing kind of every weekend, and the weekends that they sent guys out, I played really well, and then I just totally, when no one was there, I was awful. It was, you know, couldn't hit the water if I fell out of a boat type of thing. And so the last tournament of the summer, they sent Jason McLeod out, who's the scouting director. He's now I believe, assistant GM for the Cubs. He has a high role in their front office. And he came out, and the first game of the tournament, I was terrible. And he was there for that. And we went out. It was a doubleheader that day. And we went out to lunch with him to kind of discuss money for the first time, and their initial number was way lower than what I wanted, and I don't know, it was kind of probably hard for him after watching me play so poorly to be too enthusiastic about it at all. And so we talked, and at the end I think he told me, "Hey, it just looks like you're a little bit late, so maybe get ready earlier in the box." And the rest of the tournament, I just went nuts, man. I was hit homers, triples, doubles, and had a really great tournament. And so that might have cost him some money, that advice.
The number changed.
Yeah, and so we agreed on a number that was below what I had initially wanted, but it felt right. I was comfortable with the Red Sox. I liked the people, and so I signed maybe a week before Cal started, or 2 weeks, and so it was pretty much down to the wire. And it was a hard decision, but it really was the right decision in the moment.
You mentioned about your good relationship with the regional scout Blair Henry. What made that relationship so strong? And
well, he was really cool. He was a genuine guy. I could tell that he cared about me. I could tell that he liked me, and I never felt like he was like pulling a fast one on me or taking advantage of me. And he was supportive. You know, I think he believed in me. So that's it just felt good for a young player.
So you went away from home for the first time to play minor league baseball for the Red Sox. What was the track like up to the major leagues for you?
It's never linear, It's never exactly the way you plan it for any player. Some guys play 12 years in the minor leagues before they make it to the major leagues, Some guys play half a season like Gordon Beckham and then are in the major leagues. So it's different for everybody. Guys get sent up, called up, sent down, released, designated, traded, all that sort of thing. And so for me, it was pretty smooth sailing the first couple of years. I played really well. And my Double-A year in 2009, I was terrible. I really had a hard time that year. So that was a kind of wake-up call. And it was a blessing in my opinion, but I came back the next year and played really well in Double-A. I called up to Triple-A, did pretty well there, and that was when I made my debut. It was at September of 2010.
So what was that like, stepping on the field for the first time in front of thousands of people to play in a Boston Red Sox uniform?
Yeah, that was to be totally candid, I was pretty nervous. It's stressful. The major leagues are stressful. The way I describe it is the successes are the sweetest you can imagine, but the failures are also just totally magnified. So it's really it's the whole crazy emotional ride up there, and you really have to have your mental stuff together. People talk about having an even keel, and I think it's for situations like those. So I wasn't too stressed about hitting. I just remember being nervous about defense, And once the game started, I was okay. And I didn't have a great game, but I made the plays I needed to make, and it was really exhilarating. It was nerve-wracking and exhilarating.
Now, one thing that you just talked about was the mental toughness aspect. Can you talk about that and making the adjustments that you have to make to stay up there, to stay up in the major leagues? We see guys constantly make those adjustments and have success, and then other guys just fall backwards.
Well, I don't know about the adjustments because I didn't stay up there, but I know that the guys who are really great know that they're really great, and that confidence wavers much less than guys who aren't there. The players and the good players in the major leagues, the Dustin Pedroias, the David Ortizes of the world are second to none in confidence. It's pretty incredible to watch.
Now, what do you think is the hardest thing that you faced during your baseball career? Is it the mental aspect? Is it playing every day? What's the aspect? Staying healthy?
I mean, they vary. I think for me, it's the hardest part has been kind of twofold. In the game, I'm so hard on myself and I'm so analytical that I can really stunt my own performance with my inner chatter, my inner voice, and I've gotten better with that over the years. But back in the day, I used to just totally mentally take myself out of the game. If I had two bad at bats in my first two at bats, it was really hard for me to stay in the game and produce in my third and fourth at bat. I've gotten better at that now.
Would you say?
What's that?
Would you say it's anxiety or?
No, I just think that I was mentally weaker back then, and if I didn't feel good, I would give up on myself. I'd play the game. Obviously, I wouldn't take myself out of the game, but metaphorically speaking, I would collapse. And now when I'm not feeling good, or I go, strike out my first two at bats, I am much better at finding a way to still produce for the rest of the game. And that's come with time and maturity. the other part that's been hard for me in pro ball is you really give up a lot. And like, you have a community here. I mean, I look for apartments 4 different times a year or 3 different times a year. You know, there's nothing stable in my life. I can sit my life basically in the back of my car. And so it's hard to have a community back home and lasting friendships and relationships when you just have to pick up and leave in 4 months when the season starts. So, you know, you get your apartment for spring training, you go off to your season, you have to get another apartment, and the off season starts, and you go back and find an apartment wherever you want to live. You know, some guys, that's been my experience, and that's really hard for me. And because I really, you know, I'd like to have a garden sometime. I like to grow my own food, maybe, and I can't do that in this lifestyle. So you sacrifice stuff. So,
if you don't mind telling our listeners how your season's going so far, the aspects of your game you're improving on, just those things.
Yeah, it's been a really fun year for me. I've been in Double-A most of the year with the Dodgers in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We're just finished. We have 2 more games left, and it's been fun for me. I've learned a lot this year. It's been I've learned more this year about hitting than I have in any other year. The hitting coach has been phenomenal. And it's made baseball new again for me in a lot of ways. You know, I'm seeing things that I never saw, and I've seen my own swing and my swing path change before my eyes. You know, over the course of the year, which is very cool to experience. And I've met some guys that I think I'll be friends with for life. So that's been a huge bonus. It's been cool.
Well, Lars, before we let you go, we just want to ask you one final question. Do you see yourself coaching one day, or you talked about all these coaches that have helped you along the way? Do you see yourself getting into coaching one day?
Potentially. I don't think I'd want to coach professionally, but I think it could be fun to coach high school guys or something like that at some point. Yeah.
All right, Lars, thank you for joining us. We really appreciated your time, and we learned a lot. It was great speaking with you.
Hey, thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
This concludes our podcast of Sports and Rants with Brent and Pants. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at Sports and Rants. Like us on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes. And visit our website, www.sportsandrantz.blogspot.com. It would help our rankings on iTunes if you rate and review our podcast. Thanks, and have a good day.